So let's go ahead and get started this afternoon. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see you all. Look forward to some conversation this afternoon about what's been going on in ECOP to provide you a bit of an update and also to share back some of the data that you contributed to earlier. So you want to start sharing slides, Sandy? So I'll just mention that, so this is one of our First Friday events. So the Professional Development Committee and the chair alternate the, so you can go to the next slide, to alternate leadership in planning these different events. So this is one of the four components of our strategy for building up the extension system, one of which is providing professional development opportunities. We welcome suggestions, either the Professional Development Committee or me, for topics that might be of interest to include in that. And again, it's a member benefit for all of our leaders within the system. So next slide. If you have questions or comments, feel free to raise your hand or use the comment features. When we get to the section with the survey results, I'll welcome you to ask questions. So Sandy's also got a feedback survey at the end of today's session that we'd like for you to fill out. So there'll be a link to do that. So we hope that you'll take a minute to do that and then watch the blog spot for the link to the recording and other information. All right, next slide. So I wanted to report out on, here's the plans for some of our upcoming First Friday events. So we won't have one in January. It's early enough that we're afraid that it might conflict with people's winter holidays. And so save the date for February 2nd. That will be our next meeting. Some of the topics that the Professional Development Committee have identified for upcoming sessions include an update from Lewis Burke and Associates on the political landscape, a continuation of the Civil Rights Review preparation that started with our last session. The ECOP Program Committee has also mentioned that there's interest in sessions on food waste and international extension. I know Bill and I have a meeting scheduled in January with a group that's particularly interested in international. And it also came up in conversations with Dr. Misra. So look forward to some topics there. Another one that's come up is at the APLU meetings. There was a session on modernizing scholarship for the public good, an action framework for public research universities. So Wendy Fink and I had an opportunity to be involved in that project this past year, and so maybe a topic of interest. And it could be of broader interest to ACOP and ESCOP as well. So we may look for what I'll call a bonus opportunity now for you to hear from Elisa Arbach and others that were involved in that project. So, but again, welcome ideas for other topics that you think would be beneficial to all of us in extension for future topics. All right, next. So I wanted to provide, again, a couple of updates related to our efforts on behalf of ECOP since NEDA. So we mentioned professional development as being one of the initiatives. So in the strategic plan, increasing visibility and recognition of the system is another. And so we aim to link with not only people within USDA, but other agencies as well, and to expand the federal and non-federal resources available to cooperative extension. And so I'll mention that following the advocacy summit that some of us were at, Bill and I, together with the ESCOP chair and Jeanette, the executive director for George, had a couple of visits at USDA. One was with Dr. Misra and at NIFA. And so he's continues to be great about adding capacity to his initial C's that he identified in terms of collaboration and other things. And so we had good conversation with him about his interest in exploring the food and ag nexus and food security as it relates to national security, his interest in helping us to do a better job of storytelling about Extension's impact. And so we look forward to continuing collaborations there and opportunities to continue to build out our relationships there. We also met with the Office of Chief Economist with Bill Hohenstein and some of his team in the climate area there. And so had some good conversations about their interest in developing what he described as a climate literate workforce within USDA, learning from our experiences in terms of teaching people. And so as a result of that conversation, we connected his office with our program action team that's doing climate change. And so hope that there'll be some additional opportunities to come from that. Some of the things that he talked about there too were the amount of additional funding that's gone to conservation efforts and to climate initiatives. For instance, doubling of the funding that's gone to the climate hubs. And so I think each of us want to make sure that we're well connected to those in our region to make sure we can take advantages of opportunities there. Following Falcon, which I'll say from my perspective, it was the first time I'd attended the First Americans Land Grant College Consortium meeting. It was a great opportunity for some additional networking and learning about extension and outreach, and as well as teaching and research from the 1994 and from other tribal colleges perspective. Bill stuck around for and as did Ashley and perhaps a couple of others for the non-meetings, so the North American Ag Advisory Network meetings. And that is connecting us with our Canadian and Mexican counterparts on ag and rural advisory services. And so we appreciate Bill's ongoing collaboration and participation in that to represent us there. I know he's also continuing to be involved with the National Association of County Commissioners, which are natural partners with us. At APLU, there were a variety of things that we were involved in there. It's always an opportunity to be a part of a couple of sessions that recognize award winners, as well as to participate in this year happened to be the Seaman Knapp lecture. So we enjoyed hearing Caroline Henney deliver that. I think there was a link in Bill's recent Monday minutes to that. I encourage you to take a look at that. It was great to see Caroline and to hear her challenges to us in terms of, again, I think better telling our story and helping to ensure that we can at some point do away with the nation's best kept secret kind of moniker that we are seemingly stuck with, but hopefully we can shed. We had an opportunity to see the FSLI grads. I'll mention the awards. So the National Extension Award winner went to Mary Arnold, one of our 4-H youth educators, who was one of the principals in terms of positive youth development curriculum and that activity throughout the country. So it's great to see her. And then Cafe Latino was the winner, national award winner for the diversity and extension. There were other great opportunities to connect with a variety of people at APLU and meet some other people within different agencies. Bev will be relieved to know that we celebrated our USDA NASS re-up of our 5-year agreement, and we staged a photo op with Hubert Hammer. So we checked that off the list because I know Bev tried off and on all last year to get that done. Bill has provided a link here to Secretary Vilsack's keynote address there. So I invite you to take a look at that. It was a great overview. I haven't looked at the video to see how well it captured his table on the whiteboard that he developed out, but it was a very good presentation. I invite you to take a look at that. I want to thank a couple of our own for stepping up to leadership roles in serving, for instance, Ken LaValle as our ECOP liaison collaborators, and Ed Martin for Newell. A reminder about the assessments initiative that came up this morning. I'm going to look for my notes here just in terms of timeline. So a reminder that we provided information at NETA. You've had an opportunity within your regions to have additional discussion. And so we extended the timeline for discussion to ensure that everybody had an opportunity to offer feedback. So by December 8th, administrators and directors are to provide feedback to your regional executive director administrator teams. They will provide a summary to the ECOP Executive Committee. In January, the ECOP Executive Committee is going to consider feedback and refinement of options and develop a ballot for electronic vote. At our February session, there'll be an explanation of the voting process and a question and answer session, and then you'll have an opportunity to vote by email. So encourage you, if you haven't already done so, to provide feedback to your EDA team. The other, as we described, we're still in the launching stage, I guess, of the Capacity Coalition initiative. We thank Bev Durgan for her leadership of that coming year, but that's again aimed at our meeting our goal within our strategy, again, to provide additional resources to the system. All right, next slide. So one of the things that we did this past summer was to approve, in addition to the new initiative that's capacity building and one related to multi-state collaboration, we also added a new program action team. And so I'm going to let Ashley extend an invitation to all of you to participate in that.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Damona, for giving me just a few seconds here. Just want to let y'all know that we are kicking off that PAT right now, and I'm going to put my contact information in the chat here. Would love to connect with those from your institutions that you think would be great additions to this PAT. And we're just really excited to be launching this one. We know it's a really important issue all across. So thank you, Damona, for that.
Okay, next slide. All right, we're going to jump into the survey that you all or your HR teams contributed to this past spring, summer. And I want to thank Robin Shepard in particular for his work on summarizing the data from that. I know we're all interested in the results. So these are, I'll describe them as preliminary results, and they're going to be for a couple of specific questions, supplemented in this case on this slide, for example, with the data that was gathered for the assessment for related to the federal funds. And so I'll talk through each slide, but also offer you an opportunity to ask questions as we go if there are things that need to be clarified. And so in this slide, I want to emphasize that what is being reported here are the responses that represent the 65 institutions that contributed their data. So that's 86% of the population. You'll see in the table at the left that we have a bit less representation from the 1890s. We thank in particular the North Central and Southern regions for 100% participation. And so when you see the numbers, you'll have to just remember that it's not the complete population and that it will be a bit overweighted in terms of North Central and Southern because of their 100% participation in that. So at the right, you'll see that the estimated funding coming into the extension system from the federal funds, and here we've included only the Smith-Lever 3BC, 1890 extension, Smith-Lever Special Needs, FNAP, and RREA, which are defined as capacity funds, also in the assessment data that was gathered. So totaled there is 398 billion. No, let's see, 100,000 millions. Yeah, billions would be great, wouldn't it? Yeah, millions, 398 million. So we didn't include the grant contract funding, those other things at this time, because we've got to kind of dig into that a bit more to understand that, to make sure that there's no overlapping in terms of reporting associated with that. So 398 million, an additional more here we get into the billions, 1 billion in terms of state funding. So we have relatively more state funding overall than we do federal funds. And again, more county funds than we do federal funds as well. So 561 million, a total of about 2 billion, over 2 billion for the system. All right, next slide. So summarizing that into the pie chart, you'll see that federal funds account for 18% of this kind of core budget funding. Again, the federal is the capacity funds, not contract and grant funds, and more than half, 55% from state funds and 27% from county funds. That's just a graphic representation of the table that was in the previous slide. Okay, next slide. So we'll get into some of the employee numbers now. So in the table at the left, you'll see the summary of the cooperative extension employees by region in 2022. And so you'll see that, and make sure I have my notes, the slide. So I did just a bit of calculation at the side of my table. This is FTEs within the extension system. So it's all positions supported by all extension funding. So that includes educators, field specialists, faculty, staff, program support, and administrators. And so the total across the country from the reporting institutions is 22,192. So the 1890s had about 2.3% of the total. The North Central, a bit over 29%, Northeast 8%, 42% in the Southern region. So not half, but a big portion. And then the Western region was almost 18% of the total. So that's employees, again, representing the population. So everybody that's funded by extension funds and FTE count, not the number of people with any size of extension appointment. In the graph at the right, you are asked about how much the FTEs had changed within your institution from 2018 to 2022. And almost half, 49%, said that there had been an increase, and no change, 20%, 31% indicated a decrease in the number of personnel. Any questions at this stage?
Damona, good
Yes.
afternoon.
Hi, Jorge.
Hi. I can't recall if these data were broken down between state and county for those FTEs.
So this is the total population, and I'll show you a slide that has county educator numbers in it.
All right, good.
That's the only differentiation. Those are the only two categories that we have. We either have everybody or we have off-campus educators.
Okay, thank you.
So, all right, next slide, Sandy. So here we go. Here's the employees, educators, agents by program area, by region. So there's a lot of data in this table. So let's start at the left side in terms of the 1890s. So the largest portion of those educators was in ag and natural resource educator positions, and the smallest was in community rural economic development. And so North Central was a bit different in that they had nearly 10% or had 10% in community rural economic development. And for across the regions, that was the high. So the North Central region had the largest percent of their educator population in economic development compared to all the other regions. They also had the highest proportion in 4-H. So 33% of the educators in the North Central region were tagged as being 4-H educators, and that was the high across all the regions. For the Northeast, within that region, ag educators, ag and natural resources were the highest percent of the population or the breakout. The low was, again, community economic development. this region had the highest proportion of family consumer science educators. Not that much more than North Central or 1890s, but 24% was the high as a benchmark for the type of educators in that region. Moving right in the table, the southern region had 42%. This was tied with the western region in terms of high, in terms of the percent allocation of FTEs to ag and natural resources. Surprisingly, the southern region had only 1% in economic development. So that was the low for all of the regions. And then stepping right, again, high percentage in ag and natural resource for the western region. Again, the lowest portion for that region was in economic development, as it was with the southern region and several other regions. They had the lowest percentage accounted for by 4-H at 20%. They had the highest percentage in what was the non-traditional category. So the non-traditional was kind of everybody else. So it was the question asked for educators who had multiple program areas, so a combination of program areas for their appointment, or non-traditional programs. And so the examples given were 4-H/ag and natural resource, urban, generalist. I know in Oklahoma we have a couple of community health educators, and so those would have fallen into the non-traditional category. So I did do just a bit of quick math. So if you take that 22,000 total cooperative extension employees from the previous slide, and so it's the 7,521 is 34% of the FTEs are educators. So the chart that you're looking at here accounts for about a third of the FTEs within extension. Also just did a little bit of math to look at how those were allocated, or how that percentage might differ across the region. And it wasn't greatly different, but so about 35% of the total population was educators in the 1890s, 36.7 in North Central, 33 in the Northeast, 38 for the southern region. So the southern region also had kind of the high in terms of the percent of the FTEs that are county educators. I must have misspoken at somebody, yeah. So, and then the western region had about 27.6%. Questions about this side? Again, there's a lot of data there, but it's kind of a useful perspective in helping us to see how we compare across the system in terms of our investments in county educators.
Damona, was there any clarification about where FERTEP went? Was that in non-traditional, or was it split, not looked at the funding and was looking at the service?
So I think, so I'm gonna ask Robin, but I think, were these educators that were not on grant funding?
Well, these would have been what we consider the traditional program area county agents. A FERTEP person, if they were entered into the database, would likely be included in the line called non-traditional, just because they didn't fit into those four traditional program area silos. If you're asking about where do 1994 tribal educators fit overall, we have not surveyed the tribal programs yet. We've had some discussions about trying to do that, but that will require a different survey instrument. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah, thanks.
All right. Thanks, Robin. Other questions? I'm kind of trying to watch the chat at the same time, but okay. I don't see anything there. So let's go next slide, Sandy. So you were also asked about state funding changes. And so again, this is a first look at what was reported there. So anything that was plus or minus 25% was labeled significant increase or decrease. So about 20% said that they'd had significant increases in, this should say, okay, it does say state funding. I'm looking at the top line. Yeah, state funding changes in the last 4 years, so 2018 to 22. And again, these are, so here we have 4 missing responses from the 65 people who responded. So this is a summary from the 61 who responded. 42.6% said they'd had an increase in there's a fairly wide range there, 1 to 24%. We may dig into that a bit more to see how many of them are on the low end versus the high end there. Roughly 20% said that there'd been no change in their state funding. And then 11.5% said there'd been a decrease, and almost 7% said a significant decrease in their state funding. And again, we haven't yet looked at any regional or other differences, but we'll get into some small sample sizes there when, if we do that. So I don't know that it'd be perhaps fair to report some of those things out. But this is, again, provides you a perspective on what's going on nationally. So if you sum, the good news is, I guess, if you sum the top 2, then 62% have had an increase in the last 4 years. And so that's good news. The next slide just shows that graphically. So again, 4 non-respondents to that, but the largest increase was in the largest reporting group was the group that said they had an increase of from 1 to 24% in state funding. And the next slides, we'll look at the county funding. So the county funding changes a bit less of an increase compared to the state in either the in terms of the increases, so relatively more in the no change category here compared to the state, but 17% with significant increases from counties, 37% 1 to 24% increases. The good news here is nobody had a significant decrease, so more than 25% decrease in terms of county funding. An additional, well, non-response here, which may be appropriate because not every state has counties, and so that plays into the responses here. So, all right, the next slide shows that graphically. So again, a bit more a shift right in terms of the curve, if you will. So there's more in the no change and a little flatter curve, and that we don't have as many with significant increases or significant or increases. Any questions about the state or county numbers? Okay, the final slide on the next slide, Sandy. Oh, I was thinking there was one with the national. Can we go back one? Let's see. Maybe not. Okay. All right. There's no table 6 in terms of federal funding, but I'll just reference it. There were, well, you've seen this in the core capacity numbers. So there's been a 33.9% change in 1890 funding, about a 3% increase in FNEP funding, no change in the RREA funds, and about a 6.5% change in the Smith-Lever funds from FY18 to FY22, and no change in the Smith-Lever special needs. So if there are, if you have thoughts or questions about different ways to look at this, we welcome your suggestions, and we'll continue to summarize and analyze the data and share more out in the future. All right, with that, I'll introduce Michelle. So Michelle's been the leader of one of our growth initiatives in recent years as part of the health team. And so she's got some news to share with all of you. So next slide, Sandy.
Well, thank you, Damona. It's great to be with all of you. And I just want to further provide about the information we're providing in the Monday Minute and about what's happening on this new funding with Excite, particularly around bridge funding. So I'm going to just talk through a couple slides and provide this information about what this is so that we're sure all the directors, administrators have knowledge of what's happening with that. So I think, Sandy, you have the slides and can move us forward. As I think I shared with the NEDA meeting, we have been informed of a $6 million addition to the Excite project that focuses on the Bridge Access Program. And the Bridge Access Program is really filling in the gap that has arrived when we went to commercialization of COVID immunization. And so this is very focused again on COVID and about making people aware of their eligibility for free COVID vaccines, and also of where to get them and how to get them. And so this project really is ultimately to drive the uptake of COVID-19 vaccine through those who are uninsured or underinsured. And underinsured might be meaning that they had to pay any dollars at all for the COVID vaccine, whether that's their cost share at a doctor's office, whatever that might be. So the next slide talks about this bridge program, and the funding that we have available is only available for 1 year. The bridge program from the federal side has been funded from September of this year through December of 2025. So we have a fast rollout of $6 million that we really have to use for 1 year's time. And so we're going to have a multiple approach. And I need to offset this. I just was reminded by NIFA, this is still part of our interagency agreement, the original one we have with them. It fits within that scope. But we are still, NIFA and CDC are still working out the details of that. That is not completed. That paperwork is not completed. And until that is, NIFA is not able to announce any funding of that. So the issue here is, given the short time frame to do the work, we're trying to do some pre-announcements, some pre-work, getting things in position so that once we have the funding, we will be ready to go and can do the program. So I want to just be clear on behalf of my NIFA colleagues that we do not yet have the funds. We anticipate having them early in 2024. But none of that's finalized at this point. It is in process, however. So we have planned what I'm calling a three-prong approach for the $6 million for 2024. The existing 37 institutions that are involved in Excite are all contracted currently at $100,000 for the projects they're doing. We're offering them to amend their initial contract that they have, the one they have existing, with $25,000 more to integrate the bridge information into their current project. And this is very much like our A1 project was when COVID first started. This is an awareness campaign. So this is social media. This is getting the word out that there is free immunizations for people who are uninsured or underinsured, and information about where to go and how to get it. So they're being provided this opportunity, and we have provided a webinar this week to our existing 37 teams and offered them the opportunity to apply for this funding. And what we're saying, a letter of interest or a statement of interest, but it's actually will be used as the application. We just can't call it an application because we don't have the funds yet. So they are due, and that application is due by December 15th. And then we hope to have those ready to go and augment those funds as soon as they arrive for the existing teams. The second approach is the newest one, and what I really want to speak with you about today and make sure we're all clear on that, is that we are choosing to work with FNEP because many of them are currently working with the exact audience that's targeted for bridge funding. The folks that are part of our FNEP program are likely in a socioeconomic status that means that they are likely to be underinsured, if not uninsured. And so we're using, going to where we already have trusted messengers in the communities. I'm very grateful. Conversations with Suzanne Toluca and her support, as well as Shannon Hurlo and Helen Chipman, have all been very supportive of this and are involved in the process with us as we investigate and trying to move forward with a new effort to augment FNEP with some funding to do this bridge work. So it could be as simple as adding the one pager about bridge to the back of the recipe cards that they're handing out. It could be, again, FNEP social media picking up and communicating to their audience about bridge funding. So it's not so much immunization education as it is an awareness campaign of what is available and who it's available and how to get it. So we are having a webinar for FNEP institutions next week on December 7th at 3 o'clock Eastern, and all the FNEP coordinators have been invited. This will be non-competitive, but they will have to apply. And so FNEP is working on a little bit different time schedule. We're going to roll it out next week, and they can use it to fund nutrition assistance or whatever your staff is called, FNEP staff is called in your state. You can use this funding to augment staffing and cover some salary, which provides salary savings to FNEP. And we really believe that in our conversations with NIFA that this is a real win-win. It's a way to add resources to the FNEP program and to bring a whole health approach to not only nutrition education, but this opportunity for immunization for their constituents. So it will be part of an integration with the existing FNEP program, and we'll be asking them to apply for this funding by mid-February, February 16th. So we're introducing them next week. They'll have another webinar in early January, January 8th, where we'll go into detail. But we'll be providing a form to show them what they need to do to apply for this. And hopefully we'll have funding and can contract with FNEP to begin implementation in March. And their funds will run March to March with some augmentation here of what we're doing after the bridge funds are ending, as we currently know, in December. So that is ready to be rolled out. And for our 1994 institutions, we're preparing a list of options of how we can support those institutions, given our current relationship. We have a 1994 coordinator who would actually work in those communities and provide the bridge information, working alongside of them to do that. And so we have funding also out of the $6 million set aside to this. We are going to hire an associate director to provide leadership for the FNEP bridge part of the program because it's complex with 3 different efforts going on with that. And we have hired Diane Oliver on a quarter FTE to be the curriculum specialist. And she has already worked on aligning what ways the bridge information can be incorporated into the existing FNEP programs. So on the next slide, just a little bit about this. Just a little bit, the bridge program is intended for adults who are 18 plus without health insurance or without coverage for their COVID vaccines, to help them get free COVID-19 vaccines through their partners and through the partners that we already have in our communities. Many of the partners that FNEP works with would be partners that they would work with here. And there are CVS and Walgreens have been contracted nationally as providers of the bridge funds, and E-True North is a consortium of the independent pharmacies. So we will be providing to all of the folks involved with bridge funding information about where the vaccine will be available in their communities. On the next slide, I just mentioned here that there is already materials developed for bridge funding, so we'll be providing to them. They don't really have to develop new materials. There we have key message points, sample newsletter information, there's program resources. On the next slide, I share that we have there's a frequently asked questions so that they can refer to that, and we'll provide some professional development around basics that need to be known. There's a wonderful one-pager that we think is ready, that we know is ready to copy and just be added to groups, providing that to groups, and that can be an essential part of this. And there's also social media materials prepared in English and Spanish and more languages that CDC is rolling out as time goes by. So I just share that with you, that we're not asking FNEP to create materials where they'll have ready-made things to use, which is unlike any previous parts that we've had when it comes to this. We've done a lot of development of materials, and this time the materials are already developed and used. Finally, as we move to the next slides, I just want to share that we also, CDC is providing their data-informed technical assistance. These two consultants have met with our teams this week, and they'll be meeting with FNEP. And they have a great way to show a tool that will really be helpful to FNEP, that really will help with their needs assessment work, but also easily helps them determine where their under and uninsured populations are, and they can do it by zip code. So where to target this for both our current Excite institutions, our 1994s, and for FNEP, we can help them identify where the greatest need is in their state. And I think that will help each of the groups involved here to focus where it's most needed. Can we just move forward one more? I want to mention these things that I said. These are the things that we're going to, that 4 million of the 6 million will be going to the FNEP approach. And this is a really first opportunity to see if we can integrate this into existing program, and if this is a model that will support and sustain FNEP going into the future, whether there are other health programs that we can bring in and work with FNEP that might enable that to move forward. I'll also mention that there are between 25 and 30 million Americans who are underinsured or uninsured. So it's not a small population that we're searching. It is quite a sizable population that fit into this category, and there's some in every state. Finally, as we go to the next slide, as I said, we will have the indication of interest. And this previous slide will have an indication of interest of our current Excite teams by mid-December. We will have for FNEP by mid-February, as they get a little bit more time to gear up for this. So what you can do as directors and administrators, we just ask you to encourage FNEP to consider this and your support for that. Encouragement to the teams in your states that are already doing this critical work. It's challenging and new work, but we are doing have some magnificent impacts to report. And I hope to share some of those stories that just really put wind under your wings here about the great work Extension is doing in this area. Just want to again encourage you to incorporate this work into your plan of work for those states who are involved in this, so that we can document what is happening beyond our what we're doing for Excite, but in your states you can document your efforts. And we're also interested, if your state is doing immunization work, but doing it because you're funded by, perhaps we know 2 states that are funded by the Department of Public Health, we're happy to make sure that you have access to all the resources that we're putting together as part of the Excite team, and want to make them available to you as well. So that's the update. We don't have the funds yet. We know that they're working on them, and we but we're working to that end, and I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Thanks, Michelle. Any questions for Michelle? Well, we appreciate your continued leadership in this space. It's been great to see how the partnership that's developed with CDC has continued to spin off benefits to us within Extension. I hope that we can be successful with some other agencies and this kind of collaboration to elevate and amplify Extension.
And we think we will be, Damona, I'll just mention that we are currently working with the Rural Health Association. We have 3 pilot projects also going on with the Rural Health Association as a way to explore partnerships with that organization nationally. So there is some effort in swinging to our sustainability for the future long term, and more to come on that. But thank you. Thanks for the
Very
support
good.
of the ECOP through the program action team.
Very good. Thanks again. Anything else? So I'll Bill or Sandy, did I miss anything earlier that we need to bring up? Or Ron? Ron's always good. So again, I'll remind you again, contact information. So any of you who maybe I intended to early on and welcome any new directors that we might have on the screen. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Bill or to Sandy. They'll be happy to get you up to speed to provide current documents on things like our strategy, the chart that shows you the elaborate labyrinth of acronyms and branches of our organization within APLU, within ECOP, and so on. So again, for future reference and for our benefit, would you please fill out this quick anonymous survey? So you can use your phone to scan the QR code. There's also been, Sandy's dropped the link into the chat. We think, Cody.
Damona, yeah, thanks, Damona. Sorry, I was switching between my phone and computer when we were ending up the survey results. Can you help me remember, did we request information about alternative funding models, grant contracts, or partnerships with health institutions, municipalities, kind of beyond, I guess, our traditional USDA national funding, state funding, and then funding from counties?
We did. It was one, as I recall, one general question. I'm flipping through my survey to see if I can find it. But as we were studying it prior to today, we had some questions because I asked Robin if we could compare it to the assessment, well, the data that he and Ron put together that looked at grant data. And so we had some questions about how it might have been interpreted within different states. And so we need to do some additional digging on that. So yeah, we asked some questions about what types of funds supported the salaries. So yeah, you got to click a lot of boxes in terms of how you were funding different positions. And let's see, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, we asked what's the total grants and contracts funding annually that supports the system. And so you had an opportunity to put a number in there. So we're going to do a little bit more digging to make sure we understand that and may have some questions back to you on that.
Perfect. Just last kind of comment, as well as Robin was sharing too and talking about tribal college extension programs. And then we also have FERTEP. There are also some states such as Montana, I know Washington, that are entering into direct agreements with tribal nations and with tribal councils. And so those would have been, for us, been included within, field faculty, for lack of a better term, field educators, as to the disciplines when we were talking about that. So.
Okay. All right.
And
Very
Cody,
good.
that's exactly how in Washington State we answered it as well. So thanks. I was getting ready to try to say something to clarify that earlier.
Yeah, very good.
And again, kudos to Robin. This was a real huge undertaking, and it continues to be. And he is right now doing a lot of data cleaning, and we could have, waited 6 months and put out a 30-page, summary. But I think our strategy is to release what we have as we can get it done. And really, when I say we, I mean Robin
I'm his grad student. Yeah. So yeah, so we'll continue to to parse it out and share out, and may have, again, some clarifying questions for some of you. So I think it was Jason in an earlier session when we talked about the differences between our extension systems. He said, if you've seen one extension service, you've seen one extension service. So we all are funded, staff, structured differently. So it's interesting to see the comparison and to have a sense of how we stack up with others. But it's also a challenge then to compare ourselves to each other. So, all right. Well, very good. Thanks. Have a great weekend. Hope all our teams win. So, yeah. See you next time.
Thank you.